pour voir s'il y aura il y a des participants qui sont en train de s'apprêter à participer. All right, passing it off to Barbara.
Thank you, Leila. Let's get started. Welcome to Collective Commitment, a sneak peek on progress on anti-racism and international cooperation, a session that will offer a snapshot on the annual report for accountability for our sector. Bienvenue à notre session cet après-midi, nommée Engagement collectif, un aperçu des progrès réalisés dans la lutte contre le racisme en coopération internationale, une séance qui offrira un aperçu du rapport annuel, sur la responsabilité de notre secteur en antiracisme. Before I go any further, I want to make sure we all understand each other and I don't have to repeat myself. Avant d'aller plus loin, je veux m'assurer que nous nous comprenons tous et que je n'ai pas besoin de me répéter. Donc cette session aura lieu en anglais et en français. En fonction de votre préférence linguistique, veuillez trouver le bouton d'interprétation en bas de la fenêtre Zoom et cliquez sur la langue de votre choix. Une fois que vous avez cliqué sur la langue que vous souhaitez entendre, on vous propose de couper le son original pour une meilleure expérience d'écoute en sélectionnant Mute Original Sound dans la fenêtre contextuelle d'interprétation. Si vous ne voyez pas l'icône, veuillez vérifier si votre Zoom est à jour. Malheureusement, si vous utilisez Zoom sur un navigateur, au lieu de l'application, cela ne fonctionnera pas. Notre équipe est entièrement bilingue, donc si vous rencontrez des problèmes pendant la session, veuillez envoyer un message à Leila qui a Tech Support dans son nom. So the session today is going to be in English and in French. So depending on your language preference, please select the interpretation button. Please find, the interpretation button at the bottom of your Zoom window and click on the language of your choice. Once you have clicked on the language you would like to hear, consider muting the original audio for a better listening experience by selecting Mute Original Audio at the bottom of the interpretation pop-up window. If you're not seeing that icon, please check if you've downloaded the latest Zoom update. Unfortunately, if you're using Zoom on a browser instead of the app, you won't have access to interpretation. Keep in mind, our team is completely bilingual, so if you're experiencing any issues, please message Leila, who has tech support in their name, for support. So I'm going to give you a moment to do that. Je vous donne un instant pour le faire. Okay, so interpretation should now be working for everyone. So I'm going to stop repeating myself and get us going. Thank you, Wendy and Aude, for their support for the session today, our interpreters who are doing English to French and French to English. We really appreciate it, and our work wouldn't be possible without you. Another quick check-in. You may have noticed that you have been muted since you joined our session. Please remain muted unless you're asking a question or intervening so that everything runs smoothly. We're also asking you to keep in mind that this is a share. We're going to have a lot of sharing moments and to be very self-aware. We're asking folks to be self-aware about allowing everyone the space to share. At any time, if you wish to ask your question over the audio, please click on the raise your hand button and we'll make sure to pass the mic to you. We will also be asking you to react to some data and some questions with some reactions and emojis. So make sure you find the reaction button. It's right next to where you're raising your hand. So we want this to be fun. We want this to be interactive, and we're going to use the tool Zoom gives us. You can always interact with us or ask your questions in the chat. In the chat box, we will also be sharing some documentation to ensure that you can follow along with the discussion. And Mélanie is doing that for us today. She has info in her name, so you'll be seeing that pop up along. That's just allowing us to share supplementary information as we go. Okay. We're experimenting a little bit at this conference, and we're experimenting with community note-taking. So we're sharing community note-taking documents throughout the conference in the chat. And for each session, we're asking you to contribute if you can. I know some people like me listen better when they're actually taking notes. So this is a great way to help stay focused while also pouring back into the community. La valeur de ce document réside dans la diversité et le caractère unique de chacune de vos contributions. Notre objectif est d'avoir un document vivant qui capture l'essence de la session à travers vos expériences et votre point de vue. Et vous y avez accès après la séance parce que c'est un lien Google. Due to the sensitive nature of our work, we encourage you to participate to the extent you feel comfortable and to take a break from the sessions and step away from your screen at any point if you need to. We would also like to inform you that we have free psychosocial support available. Please take a moment to note the information displayed on the screen and shared in the chat so you can have access to Mobutu counseling services. The provider is a specialist in sexual violence and has experience with intercultural trauma-informed approaches. Our team is also here for you, and we have identified ourselves with the prefix staff. So you can easily identify us in case you need to reach out for any reason. If you feel the need to call us out on something, if something is happening during the session that needs to be addressed, you can send us a message via the chat box at any time. So just look for someone with staff in their name and they'll be able to help. Okay. So decolonization is possible, accessible, and a responsibility for all of us. I'm going to speak in Kinyarwanda now. Nk'umushyitsi, nk'umunyarwandakazi, ni ngombwa ko mvuga amagambo make yo gushimira abasangwabutaka bo muri iki gihugu. Ndahamagarira kuva ku butaka bw'aba Algonquin na Anishinaabe butigeze butangwa. Turi benshi turi abashyitsi muri iki gihugu, rero nabasaba ko twafatanya kwiyemeza gutega amatwi, kwigira no guha imbaraga abasangwabutaka badukikije. Ni ngombwa kumenya amateka ya gikoloni y'ubutaka dukoreramo no guha imbaraga abasangwabutaka bino. Uyu murimo w'ubumenyi urakoranye kugira ngo dukomeze kuramba mu bikorero byacu. Nifuje ko twafata uyu mwanya wo gutekereza ku byo twiyemeje ku giti cyacu na hamwe kugira ngo dushyigikirane mu byemezo abakurambere bashize mu byemezo kurambere bashize, abo n'abazaza, hamwe n'abashinzwe igihugu dutuyemo. So I just shared my land recognition in Kinyarwanda, my mother tongue. And it's important for me to speak in my language to the Indigenous communities of Turtle Island as a sign of respect and recognition that we have relationships that we can't express in any other way than in our own tongues, and as people who share experiences and dreams. As someone who is from Rwanda myself, but also lives in Canada and is a new citizen, I hold both the deep personal knowledge of the consequences of colonization and genocide, but also the privilege to find safety here, even through displacement. I truly believe liberation is possible, and I commit to doing everything that I can to support ancestors past, present, and future, and most importantly, the keepers of the land that we live on, and global Indigenous communities. We've shared in the chat the link to Native Land digital tool that helps you find the lands that you live on. And they are actually a global tool, so you can also find information about Native lands across the globe. And it is important to also learn those things about the places that we work outside of Turtle Island. So decolonization is collective work as much as it is individual work. So I have a little take home for you. After the session, I want you to book 30 minutes in your calendar next week to do some reflections. And the reflections are on the screen, and we're going to be sharing them in the chat. I'm not going to read them because this is really a take home. This is not for us to do now, it's for us to do later. But I really want to challenge you all to do this intentionally. Une fois que vous avez pris le temps, la semaine prochaine, je vous encourage à partager vos réflexions avec votre équipe, dans vos réunions d'équipe. On en a tous. Je suis certaine que tout le monde a une réunion d'équipe. Et de répéter cet exercice ensemble et de créer un plan d'action. Il est important qu'on fasse de ce travail de décolonisation une priorité. And we would love to hear whatever reflections you have as a team if you want to share them back with us as the archive. Okay, now let's go over our community agreements. This is an opportunity for us to set a collective set of guidelines on how we engage in this space. These are flexible. So if you see something you would like more conversation about or to change, please let us know and we will have that conversation. So I'm going to read them now. I'll read half in English and half in French. So we are trusting you to do what you need to ensure your full participation and that you will communicate your needs as they change. We are committing to building a safer space, prioritizing confidentiality, equitable participation, honesty, ownership over our words and actions. We are coming here open-minded, intended to be respectful and accountable. We will call out harmful behavior when we see it, hear it in any space. We are committing to being respectful, candid, transparent, and fair to all participants, regardless of language, race, national or ethnic origin, age, sex, gender, sexual orientation, marital status, ability, and anything we haven't mentioned here throughout the conference. Nous nous engageons à contribuer à un espace où tous peuvent participer, à donner place aux contributions de personnes issues de groupes minoritaires ou régulièrement exclues lors des échanges et des plénières, et à tenter de prendre la parole si je suis ressortissant de ces groupes. Nous nous engageons à éviter tout rapport de pouvoir inégalitaire et à contribuer à ce que toutes les expériences partagées soient considérées équitablement. Nous nous engageons également à participer à la conférence, avec une ouverture d'esprit, consciente que la richesse et la diversité des expériences des autres participants et participantes, bien au-delà de mon expérience singulière, m'offre l'opportunité d'étendre mes horizons, d'apprendre et de croître. Nous nous engageons aussi à promouvoir la sécurité physique, émotionnelle, sexuelle et spirituelle de tous les participants et participantes à la conférence, de même qu'agir lorsque je suis témoin de comportements de harcèlement et d'autres violences, en le signalant aux organisateurs TRIS de l'événement et aux autorités compétentes. Nous nous engageons à contribuer à l'objectif global constituant à renforcer le leadership canadien sur la scène internationale. Dans mes échanges, je favoriserai la coopération entre partenaires en vue de la réalisation d'un même but commun de justice sociale mondiale. Je vais m'arrêter là pour voir s'il y a peut-être une réponse ou des questions par rapport à ces accords communautaires. Et sinon, on va passer à la prochaine. OK. Seeing none, I'm going to move on to the next one. So, alongside what we just shared, it's important to set a list of statements that we are agreeing to treat as fact before we move forward with the conference. These, again, are open to questions or suggestions for modifications or additions if you feel that we are missing something. Once more, I'll read half in English and half in French, and you can follow through interpretation if you need interpretation. So first, all systems of oppression exist and are interconnected. Opposing systems of oppression, building alternatives, and cultural change are all necessary. Dismantling systems of oppression benefits everyone. Confronting social justice can be painful and or joyful. Liberation is possible. Nous sommes ici parce que nous le voulons et choisissons d'être ici. Nous vivons tous à des intersections et nous bénéficions et subissons tous l'oppression systématique, même si c'est de manière différente. Un individu, une communauté est experte de sa propre expérience et des solutions aux problèmes auxquels elle est confronté. Tout le monde mérite l'autonomie de choix. Et dernièrement, le corps ne ment pas. Je vais maintenant faire une petite pause pour des questions, des commentaires et voir si vous souhaitez ajouter ou changer quelque chose à ces principes communautaires. OK? On va passer à l'agenda. OK. Donc, je viens de parler super longuement. Donc, je vais faire mon possible pour avancer un peu plus vite. Merci à mon équipe pour me l'avoir signalé. Donc, je vais parler en anglais maintenant. So here's what we're going to do with the time that we have left. So as the session title suggests, this is a session focusing on the annual report and giving you a snapshot and a sense of what the data is saying. So here's what we've planned. The first portion for the annual report is really just giving you a sense of what it is and why does it matter. And in this portion, we're also going to ask you, why do you think this matters? So keep thinking about that while we go through the slides. After that, we'll be giving you the highlights of the 2023 survey responses with a data snapshot and having a validation activity. So we want to hear from you if you feel what the data is showing matches what you are experiencing. After that, we'll be having a few closing reflections, taking a break because breaks are important, and then moving into the closing session. So today you'll be hearing from Tiana, who is the co-chair of the task force. You'll also be hearing from Susan, who's the director of Global Citizens and Engagement, this Global Citizen and Engagement Division at GAC. And you'll be hearing from the ARC Hub team a little bit. You heard from Leila earlier while we were coming into the room. And you'll be hearing from Megan and myself, who we're gonna have a few sections and conversations and lead some of the validation, and participative portions of the program. Okay, so let's get started. I'm going to share a little bit about the history of the report in this section, as well as some exciting changes we've made this year. We'll then be hearing from Susan from GAC about the importance of this work for them. And then we'll be uh, going over a little bit of what you as organizations experience when you are completing the survey. So, to understand the ARC Hub, you need to know a little bit about our history and the overall ARC project and why the hub was created. So, in the summer of 2020, a renewed global reckoning of institutional, systemic, and interpersonal anti Blackness and racism happened. And I think a lot of us experienced it in different ways and at different levels. The murders of Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and George Floyd, to name a few, highlighted a moment of crisis that we were facing and continue to face, and the need for us to change and decolonize the way we do things, the way we are as communities and as workplaces, because workplaces are in some ways a form of community. I want to make sure that I say that we never say their names in vain and remember very keenly that we did not need to wait for a moment of crisis to do better um, for everyone. So during the summer of 2020 and the following months, so from 2020 to the spring of 2021, the Canadian international cooperation sector sprung into action, and there were extensive sector consultations by an advisory committee that was created in 2020 to determine where we were, what were the needs, and how to best support the sector to be anti-racist and actively so. This culminated in the creation of a framework and accountability mechanisms with an annual survey and report, which is what we're here to talk about today. The first one was launched in 2021. And we have a group of volunteers who are doing this work on the side of their desk to thank for all of those efforts and that first report and survey and the framework, of course. But this is a lot of work, and anti-racism work is not sustainable if we don't invest and prioritize it. So we had a GAC unsolicited proposal that allowed us to create the ARC Hub, which is the team that's bringing this series of events together. And the ARC Hub is a dedicated coordination secretariat and resource center for the sector and I have the pleasure of working, actually, I should say, the pleasure of working with Megan and Leila as a team of 3 to do this work. In 2022, we had the annual survey and report process continue. And that year we had 83 signatory organizations sign on. So 83 sector organizations renewed their commitment to anti-racism with 7 new signatory organizations that year. That all leads us to the moment we are in now, which is a third signatory period that happened in the late spring of 2023. So in April and June, a lot of the people in the room here definitely heard from our team and the task force, asking them to renew their commitment to anti-racism. And we are currently finalizing the report for this year. And this session is actually to give you a preview of that data and of that work. So to understand our work more generally and to fully grasp what the annual report is, we have to talk about the commitments that are in the anti-racism framework for the Canadian international cooperation sector. I will one day be able to say that name seamlessly. So the framework's overall commitment is to ensure a continuous process of anti-racist change while centering colleagues, partners, and communities with the experiences of racial bias and discrimination, particularly Black, Indigenous, and or people from historically disadvantaged countries. So the commitments that are made in the framework are as follows, and this is what organizations that sign on to the framework sign on to. So organizations are committing to measuring the ways in which employees experience the workplace unequally, acting upon this data to construct more diverse and inclusive workspaces. This is really a commitment to improving how our organizations work and our human resources. The second commitment is to recognizing and eliminating racism in our storytelling, advocacy, fundraising, and knowledge sharing, and to using our platforms to support the anti-racist agenda. This is really a commitment to being more intentional and proactive about how we talk about our work. So, comms and advocacy. Le troisième engagement est nous nous engageons à intégrer l'antiracisme dans la conception et la mise en œuvre de nos programmes de coopération afin qu'ils soient spécifiques au contexte et culturellement adaptés, ainsi qu'à constamment améliorer la conception, la mise en œuvre et l'évaluation de notre travail. Donc, ce pilier se concentre sur la programmation. Donc, comment est-ce qu'on fait notre travail et comment est-ce qu'on fait notre travail avec des partenaires ici au Canada, mais aussi à l'étranger. Donc, veuillez consulter le cadre complet pour connaître le contexte et plus de détails sur les engagements. Et je pense, Mélanie, à partager le lien direct pour que vous puissiez lire un peu plus. So, what is this famous annual survey that I've been talking about? So, once a year, we email a bunch of organizations who work, well, not a bunch, most of the Canadian international cooperation sector and humanitarian serving organizations to ask them to renew their commitment to anti-racism work in the sector. So this is an opportunity for folks to share their data around the 3 pillars that we have just talked about. So the first one being organizational human resources, the second one being comms, and the third one being programming. So we asked them questions about those 3 we asked them questions about those 3 pillars to show us how and if they are integrating anti-racism in their thinking in that work. And once we receive all of those survey submissions, our team behind the scenes, so the Task Force for Accountability that we are very lucky to work with, is a group of volunteers from the sector and from signatory organizations who commit time and energy and knowledge to making this report possible. So that team gets started on working on the report and making sure that multiple perspectives are considered when analyzing the data and making recommendations with methodological rigor and intellectual integrity. The reports are meant to present information and sector trends in a confidential manner, providing a sector pulse on anti-racism efforts without naming and shaming. So we have a list of signatory organizations, but the data is anonymized. So this is sector data, not individual organization data. Once we have all of this data, we make sure to compile a report, which we will be talking a little bit more about, and to make overarching conclusions about the progress of the sector as a whole towards anti-racism efforts. For us at the ARC-Hub as well, this is a strong basis. The base on which we organize our trainings, our resource creation, our knowledge sharing events. So this is very important and key data for our sector. En répondant au sondage annuel, votre organisation devient signataire pour l'année. Donc, c'est en répondant le sondage annuel que une organisation devient signataire. So, like all good things, And really, in the spirit of the work that we do, we took the time to kind of evaluate how things had been working after 2 years of doing this reporting system. And we realized that this was a lot of work and we were asking a lot from organizations, but also from the team that supports us. And that it was important to give a little bit of breathing room for organizations to make changes, to make adjustments, and for us to see those adjustments translated into their annual reporting. So we have made a change, and you might have noticed it as you were completing the annual survey this year, to to a biannual rotation. So 1 year with a collective commitment reporting period. So like very similar to what you have seen in 2021 and 2022, full regular survey with that allows you to extensively evaluate your organizational progress with all of the indicators that we have been using so far. So these are pretty long reports, but very detailed, very extensive data collected. So the last report that looked like this was in 2022, and we're now going to have that report happen again in 2024. What we've introduced this year is a pulse survey year. So the 2023 report and survey is a pulse survey year. So this is a new format that has a shorter survey, so 10 to 15 questions that are related to the key indicators of progress. So what is the minimum information we can have to know how the sector is doing on anti-racism? This allows us to have a quick snapshot, a quick sense of what is happening in the sector, but also more breathing room for support systems to be put in place, adjustments to be made within organizations, and for us to consolidate our anti-racism commitments and implement the recommendations that come in the report, in the fuller, bigger report. So this type of report we're going to be publishing this year in 2023. And that's the data that we're going to be sharing today. I really hope what I've just shared encourages you to be curious about the survey and our report and our results, sorry. And as I just mentioned, we are launching this 2023 survey, and we're going to be sharing that data. Tiana is going to be walking us through what we saw this year. Okay. I have spoken a lot, donc je vais laisser la parole à Suzanne pour partager quelques remarques. Donc Suzanne is going to be sharing some remarks. Thank you, Suzanne.
Okay, thanks very much, Barbara. Yeah, I listened with a lot of interest to the community principles and the agreements that that guide this space, and I think it's a very important. It's important that we've taken the time to listen to that and to have it guide us in the conversation. First, I do want to acknowledge though that I am joining. I know many of us are joining from different parts of Turtle Island. I'm joining from the traditional and unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. It is a privilege for me to be joining from this territory. The importance of that is not just historical, but it's part of this ongoing relationship and an ongoing effort to be mindful of where we are joining from and how we are joining collectively. Alors aussi, j'aimerais vous remercier de m'avoir invité à partager quelques réflexions avec vous, à vous écouter, à participer à cette discussion ouverture qui est marquée d'un grand respect mutuel. Je te remercie aussi, Barbara, aussi à Leila et Megan, pour votre leadership, non seulement dans l'organisation de cette conférence, de cette discussion, mais aussi pour le projet ARC que vous avez présenté, pour le cadre important qui guide le secteur et l'enquête annuelle dont on va apprendre un peu plus rapide dans quelques minutes. So really it is a privilege for me to join you from, in this safe space, and I won't speak too long because the most important thing here really is the opportunity to exchange and to share genuine ideas and experiences and to be able to discuss how we face, the systemic ongoing racism that exists within our society and within our organizations. And so I just wanted to share three quick thoughts with you. The most important one really is that this work matters. It matters deeply. I mean, we are all collectively working in a international cooperation with the idea of promoting human dignity for all, promoting a more just, a more inclusive, a more safe world. That, like, our ultimate goal is a bit of a north star for us, and as we keep that front and center in our thinking, it also, it sheds even more light on the importance of the work that you're doing here. I've had the privilege also in this past year to work a lot on the DAC recommendation on enabling civil society, which puts, again, also front and center the way that we work, in partnership with others around the world. To support more locally led, more equitable partnerships and international assistance, how we enable effectiveness within civil society, both in the global north and the global south. I can tell you very honestly that development cooperation ministries and agencies around the world are asking themselves very tough questions also about how they enable civil society, how they enable localization, how they enable decolonization and power shift, both globally and at home. So you all know I don't need to go into a lot of detail on the feminist approach that Canada has privileged in its international assistance. You know that it's based on human rights. You know that it's based on attacking structural barriers to gender equality. You know that it's intersectional in nature. You know that it recognizes intrinsically the multiple intersecting identities that people have, and that shape their experience of discrimination. That includes gender, that also includes race, that includes sexual orientation, that includes economic and status, disability, language. These are all real factors in the experience and opportunities that people face. And we are working together to try to make, to promote this world that is more just, that is more free, more inclusive. I am speaking also of the importance of this work in the storytelling element and the narratives that you're addressing within the ARC project, and the part of the work that I'm responsible for is engaging Canadians as global citizens. And I can assure you that reflecting on how we do that in a conscious way, how we inform and inspire and involve Canadians in international development, is about providing space for all voices in Canada and in the global South. And that doesn't happen automatically. It takes concerted, honest, real effort. And so it's my second message, in fact, this is hard work. It's hard work. We all have a long way to go. It's probably a generational change. It takes time. It takes humility. It takes honesty, and it takes an ability to sit and listen, to sit and be uncomfortable, and not to judge. And so we won't be judging, the outcomes of the survey. It takes courage to look at where we were at. So Global Affairs Canada, is in the same boat as every other organization, trying to take responsibility for systemic barriers and to do things differently. Um, I think a lot of a lot is already known about the government's approach, so I don't think that I need to go into it in a lot of detail. We have strategies like anti-racism strategies, decolonization or reconciliation strategies. We look at the employee at human resource practices, just like you. We look at the narratives and the communication, just like you. It's a long process, right? Yeah, it's a long process. Ce que j'aimerais partager, par contre, c'est de s'assurer que vous êtes au courant que les réflexions qui ont lieu dans le cadre de la transformation des subventions et des contributions au sein de AMC présente également une opportunité très importante. Alors, il y avait le Risk Hackathon en juin. Il y a un dialogue continu, des activités qui viendront dans les prochains mois aussi. Cet effort de transformation des subventions et des contributions à AMC est un chantier colossal qui honnêtement touche à presque toutes les facettes de nos relations avec les organisations, nos partenaires comme vous. Alors, on essaie honnêtement de réduire les barrières systémiques et bureaucratiques auxquelles vous faites face et on se concentre vraiment sur les questions comme la décolonisation, comme l'expérience des partenaires locaux. Ça exigera certainement un grand changement, mais cette initiative nous offre une opportunité unique vraiment de s'adresser aux barrières systémiques. Alors, je vous encourage de rester à l'afflux de ces changements imminents et à toujours offrir vos recommandations sincères, vos perceptions, vos constats. So that's a really concrete opportunity for all of us, I think. But this is hard work, you know, and we all face competing priorities. It's hard to keep this on the top of the list. There are always other you know, there's always it's we live in a complex world, you know, and so it's not easy to keep effort and attention on these issues on combating racism. But we have to, you know, come together, I think, and keep ourselves motivated, not throw in the towel. So that's really my third message is, you know, concrete collective action and that drawing strength in working together and drawing strength from one another, drawing lessons from one another is a really amazing opportunity. So it gives me a lot of hope to see that, you know, that there is this strong commitment that you're here together to talk about this, that you're allowing Global Affairs Canada into this space as well to listen and to learn. You know, you've all spent, I know, a lot of time on this within your organizations, and I know that you're committed to continue on with that. The ARC project, for you know, we're very pleased to see that it's contributing positively to this space with resources and tools. And really and encourage you to continue to stay in that group of signatories, looking at what you can do, tracking progress, and encouraging others to come along. So I will just conclude here. Thank you for giving me this space and this time to share with you and to thank you honestly for your commitment and your courage to address systemic racism. It will, you know, it's a core of how we can deliver international assistance that really does contribute to a more just, inclusive, and fair and safe world. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup, Suzanne. Et nous apprécions énormément tes remarques et l'engagement continu de l'AMC en antiracisme. Donc, je vais parler en anglais maintenant. So the framework is built in the spirit of renewal and learning. And I have spent a lot of time talking at you. So we're going to take a little bit of a break and actually have you participate. So we've shared lots about the changes that we've been making. But I now want to hear a little bit from your experiences with the survey, from you and your experiences with the survey as signatory organizations, because I know we have a few folks from signatory organizations in the room. And we prepared 3 questions. Feel free to answer 1, answer 2, answer the cluster of 3 in one time. And we'll maybe take 2 to 3 interventions here, just because I want to be mindful of time. Yeah, so I really want to really want to hear about your experiences with the survey. How does it serve you? How does it not serve you? And I'm going to stop. I'm going to stop as soon as I read the questions. So the 3 questions we're asking are: what decisions did your organization make regarding become a signatory, and why? So what decisions did you make? How did your organization complete the annual survey? what did you learn? And how did you engage with your team in this process? So the survey questions, how did you complete the survey as a team? So I'm gonna give you an opportunity to either raise your hand to share or share in the chat. But yeah, if you are a signatory organization, how do you use the survey? If you're not a signatory organization, why haven't you become a signatory organization? Is there something we could be doing better or differently to encourage you to be a signatory? That's a good point, Zainab. I'll read Zainab's comments. So not everyone receives the survey. That's true. We have been making a lot of efforts in terms of outreach to Canadian international cooperation organizations, and we will be emailing the folks who are in this room and making sure that you are included in future outreach. So I'll let Shannon go first, and then Gina, and then Zainab.
Thanks, Barbara, and thank you, Susan, and everyone for the comments so far. I wanted to share in particular our experience with the survey because I think I was really pleased with how we filled in the survey this year. So as I'm sure you're not surprised, Cooperation Canada is a signatory of the anti-racist framework. And I should hope our reasons for doing so have been very clear throughout this conference and the wonderful teams that are supporting the conversation that we're having here. So I wanted to kind of zero in a little bit on what we did the first year versus this year. So the first year with the survey, I filled in the survey. I looked at what we were doing as an organization, kind of put it together and responded. And so this year, we really wanted to change that approach and we wanted to engage the team. So our team actually meets fairly regularly for conversations around equity, and we've been working through our own strategy, as some of you may know. And so this year we completed as a team. So we had members that were responsible for each kind of pillar of the framework, so communications, programming, and kind of operations admin, kind of lead breakout group discussions with our team where folks got to explore the survey questions, kind of collectively come up with the answers. And then even in the question, the final one that asks you how well you've integrated racism into your work, we actually took a Mentimeter and had all of the team contribute to that. And so it was a really valuable process, I think, for bringing the whole team along, for getting everyone to kind of have space to reflect. But we also learned a few important things. And I think maybe two things that I'll share. One is the point around principles of like, what does anti-racism actually mean? And so you can answer the questions, but actually need the space to talk about what those principles mean. And the other is, even when we look at our progress on anti-racism, just really the importance of disaggregating those scores according to different identity characteristics in the organization. So if, 5 white folks all say we've integrated, and then it turns out that our racialized staff are like, no, you're a 3 or a 2, we need to know that. So that's definitely something we would improve for the next round.
Thank you, Shannon. I think that answer also highlights the last part of that answer is super important, and it's actually part of our of the recommendations we have for the sector, is really the importance of disaggregated data. Data is super valuable when it's disaggregated, and we see the importance of it, and like the details. The devil is in the details when it comes to anti-racism efforts and decolonization efforts. So it's really important to always be thinking about, okay, how can we do this better? How can we get a better sense of our organizational needs and all that? Thank you for sharing, Shannon. Gina?
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Great. So Farm Radio International is a signatory, and as I understand it, that started sort of before my time at the organization. And what I know is that there was a sense that we need support to, and there was, a mechanism created to provide support to organizations in the sector to continue work that had started before the timeline that the ARC team presented, the sort of crisis moment as it's framed. And wanted to basically seize the opportunity to learn and to continue that work, basically knowing that there's a lot of interest and intention, and not so much concrete ideas about how to move forward with all of those intentions. Farm Radio is an organization that has still sort of fairly centralized operation, working across sub-Saharan Africa with a headquarters office in Ottawa. And so for years had been exploring and has a very collaborative and participatory culture, ways to sort of continue to decentralize power, if we want to put it that way. So that was a really important opportunity for the organization. In the first year, we completed the survey between myself and the executive director, because we were already late and we needed to get it done, and recognized after that wasn't a fantastic process. And we sort of shared, we had a discussion with the organizational DEI working group about the various indicators, and getting everyone kind of more aware of the fact that this framework exists and the ways that it could be helpful to the organization in learning, and to make sure that sort of both that DEI working group, but also the rest of staff understand this is a process that many organizations are undertaking and have been, and we can take advantage of learning altogether. So that was a really helpful part of the organizational kind of change and learning process. And then this year, honestly, we were a little bit disappointed that it was shorter, but now hearing your explanation of it, it makes a lot of sense, because the more detailed survey took a lot of time, but was very meaningful and interesting for organizational learning. And this time around, we were glad that it was shorter, but there wasn't as much space to sort of use it as a check-in for the organization. And so that's maybe an interesting reflection from our side. And this year, we, the two of us that are co-coordinators of our DEI working group, the other is Rex Chapota, who's our senior advisor on strategy at Farm Radio International. We filled it out together, and we'll sort of report back with the results of the ARC report to the DEI working group to make sure we can continue sort of adapting our plans according to learning in the sector and in the organization. Yeah, I'll stop there.
Thank you, Digna. I think it's coming out of, I think, one, thank you so much for that feedback around like the new survey and how you received it. And, you know, it's a change. We're constantly learning. And I think it links to my second point. Something that's coming out of the reflections that both Shannon and you were sharing, but also some of the reflections in the chat, specifically from Kate, is this is a continuous learning process, right? We're doing things, we're changing things, we're adjusting. And as we get new information, we place ourselves in a better position to do this work better and to do this work differently. And I think I'm glad to hear that the survey helps highlight things and change systems within our own organizations and pushes us to question the way we do things and all of that. So it's doing what it's supposed to do. So that's great. But I really take on that feedback about, you know, this was a really interesting tool and important tool and something we were looking forward to. So how it's finding the right balance. And I'll take that back and share it with the task force as well. Zainab, I'm so sorry. We're going to have to move on to the next section because I want us to talk about the survey highlights, but I'm inviting you to share in the chat your reflections. I'll also highlight two things. Lydia shared in the chat that one of the reasons an organization hasn't been a signatory is priority of leadership. And that is a major challenge for us in terms of this work, is making sure that we're engaging with leadership. But in our decolonial way, we also think that leadership is not the only space that should be engaged. We should be engaging everyone, and everyone has the potential to be a leader. So it's but it is an important point, and we will take that back. And we are developing tools on how to engage leaders and to show that this work is important to them. And then Kate, you shared a little bit about Videa. So Kate Hirschak works with Videa, and they became a signatory because they believe that tools that make our whole sector hold each other accountable are important. And that is really a big piece of this too. It's collective work. So thank you, Kate, for highlighting that. And that you have your own decolonial and anti-racist tools that we use. So we always want to learn what others are doing. So yes, coming back to the iterative learning process from each other. And I know that in our resource library that we have on our website, we have a lot of the work that Videa has done. They have some really interesting ways of approaching work that I think we can all learn from. So I would encourage you to check their work out and check our website to have those references if you're looking for them. Okay, so we're going to move on to maybe everyone's, the part everyone is most excited for. So a snapshot of the data. So I'm going to pass it on to Tiana. So Tiana Ridley-Padmore is the co-chair of our task force, so the Task Force for Accountability. So the group of people behind the scenes who put this report together with the support of the ArcHub. It's the other way around. The task force is leading, we're really supporting. And she's going to walk us through just some general data, organizational / HR highlights, comms highlights, programming, and then final reflections. Thank you, Tiana.
Thank you, Barbara. Thank you, team. Good afternoon. My name is Tiana Ridley-Padmore. I'm the co-chair of the ARC Task Force and very, very pleased and feel privileged to share a high-level snapshot of this year's findings. And it will go quickly because this year we did have a much shorter survey than in years past. Alors, cette année, nous avons reçu des réponses de 71 organisations du secteur canadien de la coopération internationale. Et même si la période d'inscription a été plus longue que les années précédentes et que le formulaire d'enquête a été nettement plus court, nous avons reçu moins de signataires cette année. Alors, cela représente une baisse de 12 organisations par rapport aux 83 organisations du sondage publié en 2022. So we did see a decrease this year in the amount of signatories who signed on from years past. That said, when we started this work in 2021, only 8% of organizations who had signed on represented larger scale organizations. And in this year's report, we did see a fairly evenly split between small, medium, and large organizations, indicating positive uptake from larger players in Canada's international cooperation sector. So although there was a decrease in the number of signatories, a slight decrease in the number of signatories, I imagine that the impact would have leveled off or potentially even increased. Now I'm gonna walk you through the rest of the data at a very high level. I don't want everybody to just be listening to me list off numbers. And so I'm going to go fairly quickly through a data snapshot across human resources, communications, programs, and final reflections, and would invite you to dive deeper into the data once the report is launched and in your inboxes. So it's important to note that the sample of respondents in 2023 does not match the exact sample at baseline, right? So in the first year, we had 71 organizations representing 78 organizations in Canada's international cooperation sector sign on. In year 2, we had 83 organizations sign on, and in this third year, we have 71 organizations. And each year we've had new organizations sign on, and we've also had a couple organizations drop off. And so that makes it very difficult to compare data year after year because we're not comparing it based off of the same sample. That said, the idea is to present a snapshot of Canada's international cooperation sector generally and how we're moving forward. And so for the purpose of this exercise, I will be comparing some of that data. Now, when it comes to human resources, we note that 63% of organizations have explicit references to anti-racist principles in their operational policies and practices. And that represents 45 out of the 71 organizations. Some examples of that in practice include recruitment and hiring. So we've seen 61% of organizations include explicit references to anti-racist principles in hiring or recruitment policies and practices. And this is huge. 61% of organizations included explicit references to anti-racist principles. Now, in 2022, that number was 35%. So that's a huge increase in terms of the number of organizations that are actively and intentionally incorporating anti-racist principles into hiring and recruitment. We've also seen 61% of organizations, signatory organizations, have dedicated personnel within their organizations who promote diversity and inclusion as part of their official duties and responsibilities. So having very clear staff and point people who are helping ensure that this work drives forward. Next, in terms of our communications, en matière de communication, une minorité, alors 39% des organisations, ont indiqué qu'elles fassent explicitement référence à la lutte contre le racisme dans les politiques et les procédures qui guident la communication publique. Alors ça inclut les pratiques de communication publique, les directives de marque, les processus de collecte de fonds, de plaidoyer et d'engagement des parties prenantes. Et puis, la majorité, alors 77% des organisations ont indiqué qu'elles avaient obtenu des documents provenant directement de producteurs de contenu national, tels que des photographes, des écrivains ou du personnel national. So we are seeing that the majority of organizations, and especially organizations in contexts where it's possible, are getting content communications sourced directly from content producers in the local contexts. So this represents a dominant practice across the sector and an increase from years past. In terms of our programming, only 35% of respondents reported having explicit references to anti-racism in their policies or procedures that guide their projects or program development practices. So when it comes to monitoring and evaluation, this translates to 18%, or 13 out of the 71 signatories, who indicated that they use monitoring and evaluation metrics which explicitly examine racial justice or anti-racism within their programming portfolio. So the vast majority of organizations in the sector still have not yet incorporated this work and key indicators into their programming and evaluation. That said, it still represents an increase from years past. So in 2022, only 10% of organizations had indicated using racial justice or anti-racist centered metrics as part of their monitoring and evaluation. In terms of decision-making, we've also seen an increase from last year. So we've seen 52% of organizations, or 37 out of the 71, reporting having official guidelines or procedures regarding the decision-making roles of local staff and partners in regards to project activities and operations. And so this this represents a 7% increase from last year. And this is very much aligned and likely connected to localization trends that we're seeing across the sector as well. And so, ces données ne sont pas aussi approfondies que celles des années précédentes, mais je pense qu'elles offrent une tendance vraiment intéressante et encourageante, qui agit en quelque sorte comme un microcosme de ce qui se passe dans l'ensemble de la société canadienne. You know, so over the pandemic, I became a hiker. I started to practice wellness and go outside more. And one of the things that I noticed is that at the base camp, at the beginning of a hike, you'll see a lot of people, you know, congregated and a lot of people getting ready, and it's a bit of a congested area. And then the further you go along the hike, the less and less people that are along that journey. And then when you get to the peak, sometimes you might be the only person up there, or there might be a couple of others. And I think that this process is very much a journey. And it's not measured by how many people are at the peak. It's measured by the average. And if we think that, if we look at the snapshot of this year compared to last year's, we have definitely increased in terms of the amount of kilometers traveled, and will continue to increase, I imagine. So we are seeing a slight decrease in the number of organizations engaged in this work, but those that are engaged are actively engaged at various degrees and at various points of their journey. But the work has deepened, with signatory organizations slowly moving the needle of anti-racist integration into the work that we do and how we do our work. So for the organizations that responded to the survey, 7% noted that anti-racism has not been integrated at all. 27% noted a limited degree of integration. 54% indicated that anti-racism has been incorporated into their organizational operations and activities to a moderate degree, 7% to a high degree, and 4%, representing 3 organizations, indicated that it's been fully integrated. So in other words, the majority of respondents reported that they had a moderate to very high degree of anti-racist practice integrated within their operations and activities. And this represents one of the most compelling shifts since the launch of the framework in 2020. And if you look at this table that's presented on the screen, you can see it almost like a scale that's actively sliding right in front of our faces, where we're seeing the numbers slowly trickle towards, and those kilometers being traveled slowly but surely towards greater anti-racist integration. Nous savons que ce travail peut être épuisant et lent, mais cela ne le rend pas moins critique. We know that this work can be exhausting and slow-moving, but that doesn't make it any less critical. It has taken hundreds of years of systemic racism and colonization to get us to this point, and we've only just begun. This framework is only 3 years old, and it's a marathon, not a sprint. And so I thank you all for being part of this journey, looking around this virtual room. It's opportunities like this that are providing us with chances to learn from one another. And it's the people right here in this room that are so critical in helping to move this work forward and making sure that we get our kilometers in. So thank you. And Megan, I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you, Tiana. Actually, before we go to Megan, can we go back to the reflection slide? I just want to get a first reaction from folks, because we are participating in the session. So I think at the top of the session, I mentioned the reaction button. So maybe if we could get a first reaction from folks on just your first initial reaction to these, to the data that that Tiana has just shared. Do you think it's encouraging? Do you think, are there things that are surprising? So any emoji that you can find, just find an emoji that helps you, that describes how you feel about the results that we just saw, and then we'll move into the validation activity. Okay, we see some thumbs ups, some surprised faces. It is very encouraging data, like you just said, Tiana, and a few applauses. And I think that have to say thank you so much, especially in your role as co-chair. You've done a tremendous amount of work on this since the beginning. So a lot of appreciation for the work that you do and your contribution to this change in the sector. Thank you, everyone. You can also share your reactions in the chat. We'll be checking the chat. We'll be talking about it. It is an interactive space. But now, Megan, I'll pass it on to you so we can talk a little bit about validation.
Merci, Barbara. Donc, effectivement, on va commencer l'activité de validation qui se veut un espace interactif pour discuter des obstacles que vous rencontrez, que ce soit en tant qu'individu ou qu'organisation, dans l'intégration de l'antiracisme. Donc, on va d'abord aborder les barrières auxquelles vous vous confrontez avant d'échanger sur la manière de mieux vous soutenir dans le travail que vous faites. So as we all know, anti-racist work is a lot of work, hence the reason why we call it that way. It takes a lot of effort and commitment, and our job at the Art Hub is to supporting you in doing this work. So today we wanted to take a moment to look at the barriers you are facing in this anti-racism journey. Overall, our organization shared that the three main barriers to integrating anti-racism are financial, time, and capacity. So we would like to know if these barriers feel right to you, if they are representative. And to do so, I will again invite you to click on the reaction icon at the bottom of your screen, then click on yes or no. So as you can see here, if they feel representative, you can click on the little green check, and if they're not, on the red X. And yeah, so I'll give you a moment to do it. And of course, if you have other barriers in your own top 3, please raise your hand and share them with us. And if you don't feel comfortable doing so over the audio, please share it in the chat. So I'll give everyone a moment, and just a friendly reminder to my team that I cannot see reaction if people are doing reaction. So just give me a heads up if it seems representative or not.
So we have one reaction from Musu that is, this doesn't feel representative.
Okay, good. Do we have any other reaction?
We have another one from Pat that is like, this is kind of disappointing. Musu, would you like to share a little bit more?
Hello, everybody. I just thought I'd explain why I said no. Not because I think this is the financial time and capacity, but my experience, I've been in 2 different organizations since this started. And I think one of the first barriers that I've noticed is that the shared definitions of what anti-racism means and a shared sense of destination or direction in terms of where we're going when we're talking about anti-racism. I think that has stood out to me as a barrier, is not being on the same place. Anti-racism evokes a lot of emotions from different people, some very positive, some very negative. And the time, financial resources, and capacity to bring people together and get them on the same page, in my experience, has been one of the greatest barriers to doing this work. It's worth doing it, but it does take a lot of not just emotional, but all these resources that we talk about here. But I think if we dug deeper into why these are barriers, it starts with that work of actually getting people moving in the same direction. And when we're talking about change, you know, the bell curve of change with early adopters and people coming along, the bulk in the middle, and then the people who lag behind, holds true for this too. And there's always this effort that comes with bringing people along that bell curve. So that's all I wanted to explain. Not because I didn't think these were representative, but because I think they represent a deeper barrier.
Of course. Thank you so much, Musu, for this important reflection. And in the chat, I'm seeing some other comments. So for some, everything sits in the bucket of investment and comes back to finance. For others, we have here mixed emotion, feeling both encouraging and making a point of the urgency that we need to keep doing better. Yes, that's true. Maybe the surprise face wasn't the best to reflect this mixed reaction. Thank you so much, Rosa, for this great reflection. I totally agree with you. We have also creativity, innovation, solidarity, or lack thereof, that are important barriers from Shannon. Thank you. Some question. So I don't know if, Tiana, go ahead. Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to also add, when it comes to financial, I think that's a really nuanced area, especially for our sector. So we can talk about financial on the level of having the resources, the time resources, and the financial resources, for training, or to hire dedicated staff, or to ensure that this work doesn't sit on the side of desks, which is a huge barrier in and of itself. And then I think another financial barrier is also that we are a sector that is largely driven by donations and external funding. And so I think another financial barrier is finding language and approaches that are not alienating to supporters, or that are still able to convey need, while simultaneously not trying not to remove autonomy and agency from the folks that we serve. And so I think that to Shannon's point, that financial piece can even be further unpacked.
A lot of thumbs up for what you just shared, Tiana. Thank you so much for that. It was so true. And yeah, thank you all for your sharing. Now that we have a better understanding of the main barriers in integrating anti-racism, let's take a first stab at deconstructing and overcoming these barriers by learning from each other. And I think we already started that part. Thank you. So we are going to be using a fun tool to do so. I think most of you are familiar with Mentimeter. And if you're not, no worries. We're here to help you. So I will invite you all to grab your phone and to go to menti.com or scan the QR code just here to join. And so you just have to enter this code, so 23 74 77 16 in Mentimeter, and you'll be able to answer, but also to see everyone else answer in real time, as it is meant to be an interactive space. So I'll give you all a moment to join, and it will give me a moment to share the Mentimeter in a second. I'll give you a moment to join. If you maybe if you can give me a thumbs up when it's done, so that I can see how many people have joined.
Would it be possible to give us the number again? Because I might have taken it down wrong. I'm not able to get in with the number that you provided.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I think the number changed while I was creating it. So the new number is 2929 41 36. I'll write it down in the chat as well. So 2920. Oh, thank you, Barbara, for doing it for me.
Perfect.
Megan, can you just send the Mentimeter link again? It's Ashim from Congo. Can you send it on chat, please?
Sorry, I just put my sound a little bit J'ai augmenté le volume de mon son, je m'excuse. Est-ce que vous pouvez répéter?
Non, non, c'est déjà. J'ai demandé pour qu'on envoie les Mentimeter sur le chat pour qu'on clique sur it pour y entrer. Ça, c'est
Oui.
ce que j'ai demandé. Oui, oui, c'est ça. J'ai déjà fait ça. Merci beaucoup.
Donc, le lien est disponible dans le chat. C'est vraiment seulement menti.com. Et une fois arrivé sur la page web, vous avez juste à entrer le code affiché à l'écran et aussi disponible dans le chat. Donc, c'est 2929 4136. So there's now 13 people that have joined in the Menti, 14 now. If anybody's having trouble also joining, please reach out to Leila so they can help you. And I'm going to start in 1 minute because you can join and answer the answer like where we are going to be at. No worries. So no rush, but inviting you all to join. So we'll start with the first question. And as I was saying, no worries, you can join the Menti meter at any time and just keep going where we are at. No worries. So as our for first question, we would like to know, how did your organization overcome these or one of these barriers? So please share some example or your experience in doing so. So I'll give you, again, a moment. Just as a reminder, the main barriers we were seeing and first analyzing the survey were financial, time, and capacity. And some of you highlighted new one and talk a little bit deeper about some of them. So just keeping that in mind, keeping also your barriers in mind to share. Donc, les réponses commencent à arriver. Merci beaucoup. So our task force set up regular meetings. Meeting regularly helped keep us on track and moving forward. Finding online free resources to help with learning in the organization. Yeah, we also have a great resource library that I'll talk a bit more about later to help with that as well. Organization-wide anti-racism sessions, creation of anti-racism steering committee, planning to recruit people in key positions with expertise in equity, diversity, anti-racism, and anti-oppression. Communities meeting. I think the interesting thing is that leadership has such a different perspective of success than staff. Kind of has just kept on pushing without racialized staff. Yeah. Dialogue. Also, if you would like to raise your hand and go a little bit deeper into what you have done, if you want to share your experience, please feel free to raise your hand and I'll hand over the mic so you can share your experience yourself. Budget for work. Yeah, you need to embed in roles and put money on budget, aligning anti-racist priorities with existing organizational priorities and goals. Incorporating it into a regular existing space. Yeah, making time, making space for that work to happen, prioritizing. I think this is a key way of overcoming these barriers. Development of a policy framework. I'll give maybe another few seconds to see if answers keep coming or if people are raising their hands to to share them over the mic, ensuring that this work does not get forgotten, raising it during document reviews, strategic planning, meetings, comms, pieces, yeah, etc. Engaging leadership and staff in the conversation. Yeah, it has to be integrated at any level. So find ways to build equity as a competency. The 50-30 challenge offers a lot of free resources for leadership and other track that complement art hubs. Yeah, that's a good reminder. Thank you. Putting racialized staff in charge of the process, of course. So I don't see any hands raised. So also keep in mind that we will be keeping that the answer, and we will be sharing them afterwards with you all. So it's a living thing, no worries. We'll be able to come back to it. Donc, second question. Just before that, sorry, keeping in mind these answer and also the barriers before. Oh, Gina, we have Gina, sorry. I just missaid your name. I'm so sorry. You can take over the floor.
It's okay. Very sort of imperfect solution. I don't know if it's a solution, but a process that the organization has had for a long time is all staff spaces for reflection and thinking. So prior to and separate from work on anti-racism. And there's been sort of exploration of how to make those very established staff spaces, we call them Thinking Thursdays, there's a couple of others, safer for learning and reflection across the sort of racial and other differences and power dynamics in the organization. Often those spaces weren't ones where there was actually a lot of open reflection, and it seems to have been changing with some sort of experimenting of separate spaces across different power dynamics, and sort of supporting group facilitators within those spaces to make it clear what does and doesn't need to be shared across those spaces. And so lots of kind of exploring how to have intentional reflection and learning that's individual and shared, because everyone needs those spaces to reflect and process, and some of those can be at work and some of them don't need to be, some of them shared, and others not. That's one.
Thank you so much, Gina. Yeah, Thinking Thursday are a space that we had the chance to be part of once before, and we really appreciate it. It's a really good way of overcoming these barriers, and it was really interesting. So thank you for sharing with the group. And yeah, I think these are all examples of how we can overcome these colonial barriers. And I would invite everyone to circle back to these two questions and to challenge yourself to continue this conversation within your own organization. The colonial roots of the sectors in which our organizations exist foster and promote a capitalistic Western vision that inscribe, for example, time and funding as barriers to integrating anti-racism. And they arise from a Western way of thinking and doing that condition our priorities at every level. Although they exist within the colonial structure of our sector, these are barriers we are giving ourselves as a way to excuse the fact that we're choosing not to prioritize anti-racism in our work. So what you all just shared is a good reminder that both can exist at the same time. You can face barriers and still do the anti-racism work that needs to be done. So let's decolonize our priorities and change the fact that our sector is not where we need it to be. And I really hope this moment of knowledge sharing will inspire us all in our journey to decolonize our priorities. Now, quickly, We would like to know how the Anti-Racist Hub can best support you in this process, in your journey of integrating anti-racism. So we are a bit running out of time, so I'll give you a minute or two to do it. And like I said, take your time to answer, and we can come back to that later in the answer we have, and make sure to integrate them and reflect on them to best support you in your work. And while you are answering, I just want to remind you a little bit about what the ARC Hub can do to support you. So on a des trainings, on a des formations, pardonnez-moi. Donc, sur notre site web, on a le programme de formation 2023. Évidemment, on va en avoir un aussi pour l'année 2024. On a une bibliothèque de ressources que je vais vous partager là, dans quelques instants. On a aussi des espaces de partage des connaissances, donc des événements qui sont faits pour ouvrir la conversation, ouvrir le dialogue. Par exemple, l'année dernière, on avait un événement sur le lancement d'un livre intitulé White Saviorism in International Development. On a aussi notre infolette, donc à peu près aux 2 mois, avec des recommandations comme des vidéos, des livres, des films à écouter, un peu pour diversifier la façon dont on apprend, dont on peut s'éduquer à tous les jours. We also have modules that are coming up next year. We have community gatherings for community affected by racism to have a safer space. And we also give strategic advice. So we have a lot of things there to support you all in this journey. And as I'm seeing in the Mentee, keep doing what you're doing. Resources are so helpful. And for that, we are going to need your collaboration, as you will see in a moment. Specific resources. Good, so thank you. And thank you all for also doing this work and prioritizing anti-racism in the work that you do. So now I'm gonna jump into our resource library. So I'll just need a moment to stop sharing my screen and to jump into a new one. Oh. Yes, as mentioned before, we have developed an amazing tool as a first step in supporting you. So we published a few months ago our resource library, where we aim at providing a one-stop shop for key resources for individual and organization in our sector. Our resource library is also available in French, and when possible, we try to include resources that are available in various languages as well. So to access it, you just have to go in resources here, and you can either use a search bar in here or navigate through our various categories. And at the moment, we have 12 categories and are always open to feedback, proposition if you have new categories we should include. So for example, if I was looking for a video, let's say I'm not in the mood to read at the moment, so I want to watch something. So for example, you can always see in which categories the resources go. So here we have a video from Doctors Without Borders, and we also created 4 key criteria for the selection of the resources. So we have people-centered, accessibility, innovative process, and art framework signatories, which are always indicated at below the resource, sorry. So these are meant to help you choose a resource with intentionality. And with the support of our research consultant, Robin Gusto, we've started contacting some organizations to contribute to growing this collective knowledge sharing effort. So as I was saying, this library is intended to be an involving, intentional resources that best meets your need. And for that, we need your collaboration. You often ask us for concrete example and peer learning, and this space is a really good first step to do it. So our goal is to access some of your resources. It can be, for example, internal policies, code of conduct, procedure, and all that are typically not accessible to the wider sector. And so in the chat, you'll find the link to share your resources with us so that you can contribute to our resource library. Parallèlement, nous avons aussi travaillé à élaborer une base de données d'experts et d'expertes qui adoptent des approches décoloniales et antiracistes pour soutenir les organisations de développement international et d'aide humanitaire. Donc, encore une fois, on a besoin de votre collaboration pour développer cette base de données diversifiée pour qu'elle puisse répondre au mieux à vos besoins. Donc, pour ce faire, je vous invite encore une fois à partager les experts, les expertes avec lesquels vous avez déjà collaboré, que ce soit au Canada ou ailleurs dans le monde, et dont les connaissances et les compétences seraient pertinentes pour les organisations du secteur. Donc, au-delà des coordonnées, évidemment, aussi, je vous invite à partager les coordonnées avec leur consentement éclairé. Donc, c'est ça. Au-delà des coordonnées, je vous invite aussi à fournir une brève description de leur domaine d'expertise et une rétroaction de l'expérience que vous avez eue en collaborant avec ces personnes-là. Et les informations sur les moyens culturellement appropriés pour les contacter si besoin. Donc, vous pouvez le faire en nous envoyant directement un courriel à arc@cooperation.ca et vous avez peut-être aussi déjà reçu là, un courriel de notre part à cet effet. Si ce n'est pas le cas, je vous invite à prendre les devants et à nous les envoyer. Donc, je te repasse la parole, Barbara.
Merci beaucoup, Megan. Okay, we have 3 minutes left before the break. And the break is super important, so I'm going to keep what I have to say in 3 minutes. Megan, could you share the slides again and launch the poll? Because we'll do those at the same time to make things easier. So we're going to wrap up this section of the session and take a 15-minute break and come back at 3:30. Where we will start our closing session, which is actually an activity about futures thinking. So what is the future that we are imagining as a sector, keeping in mind what we do at the ARC Hub, so anti-racism work, which we've been talking about for a little bit now, but also what Digna does. So PSEAH, how do we include prevention of sexual assault, exploitation, and harassment into our work? So that's going to be a fun, very active activity. So hopefully you can join us at 3:30. But in the remaining time that we have, Megan has put up our exit survey. We are a GAC-funded organization, and part of our work is showing that we are doing this work. Accountability matters if you have been with us from the beginning. So if you can please complete and answer those 2 questions, that would be great. While you do that, I will share a little bit from our perspective on what's next, how to keep in touch, what's next and how to keep in touch. So first thing is, Megan, if you could go to the next slide. So first, thank you to Cooperation Canada and GAC. The ARC Hub and Digna, both programs are housed at Cooperation Canada and generously funded by Global Affairs Canada, so that they make our work possible. And we are grateful for that. You've seen our faces today, but the team behind the conference is on the next slide. And these are the people who we would like you to keep in touch. So Digna is managed by Fanta Diaby. Leila Moumini Chouassi is our racial justice expert at the ARC Hub. I'm the program coordinator for the ARC Hub, and Megan, who is just sharing, who is just leading the validation activity, is our program assistant. Please stay in touch with us. Please continue engaging in this work. Please get on our newsletter so you can learn more about the full report when it comes out, and participate in those sessions, but also any of the other amazing events that we'll be putting together, continuing to put together over the next couple of months. Yeah. So we're really excited. The report will be launched in 2023. So in the next couple of weeks, we should have a date for that deep dive into the data, but also a copy for you to consult. And the report is released in English and in French. Okay, I think you have all had the opportunity to complete the poll. If that is the case, once you're done with that, please go take a break. We will be right here in the same link, so you don't have to leave the meeting for the closing session. So walk away from your desk. I will be doing the same. Stretch your legs, stay hydrated, and then we'll all come back together for our closing session. Thank you so much for being here. A special thanks to Susan and Tiana for also presenting today and sharing both their knowledge, but also their hopes for the sector and practical ways we can do that all together. Thank you so much. Okay, I will stop speaking now. Team, I also think we should be taking a break. All the info is on the screen, so let's shut off our cameras, step away, and come back for 3:30. Thank you, everyone. Wendy and Aude, feel free to take a break as well. No one the slide is up, so people will know that something is happening. I'll be back in a few minutes to also monitor the room, but I think it's important for you to take a break as well. Thank you so much for your work.
Hi everyone. So it is now past 3:30, so just letting folks know that it's time to come back into the room. If you're listening to this, for those who are on, we'll just give a couple of minutes for folks to come back into the room for our last session. And as folks are just coming back into the room, I will go over the housekeeping very quickly because we want to save as much time as possible for the activity we will have following all of this. So just some quick housekeeping reminders again. The first reminder, actually, before I start into the reminders, could everyone put either a thumbs up or a reaction just to let me know that you're back in the room? Okay, see one heart, couple of thumbs up. Okay. Okay, great. All right, so I'm seeing more reactions and people are slowly coming back into the room. As I was saying, welcome and thank you all so much for joining us for our very last session that's titled, What is Next? So I will be going through some quick reminders again, as we spoke about the very first one being, of course, that there is simultaneous interpretation. If you have any issues with that, you can contact the tech commander, Mark, and he will be able to help you. As we've done in previous session, we will still be using and incorporating the collective note-taking for this session as well, and you can choose to write notes either in the English or the French document. The final reminder is that we have psychosocial support, and the psychosocial support is free of charge and it's confidential. So if at any point you feel the need to step out or if you want support, please feel free to reach out. All of this info is being shared in the chat as well. So you'll have that for reference. So without further ado, and to kind of save us time, we only have an hour of time left for the rest of this conference. We will just go on to our land acknowledgement activity. And for that, I will be passing on the mic to my wonderful colleague, Leila.
Hi, folks. Welcome back, and thank you for being here at our closing. So yeah, we do. Oh, I always forget. My apologies. I always forget the tape. As we close out the conference, we want to again honor the land that we're on and have an opportunity to remind folks and invite folks into an active moment of recognition and honoring of the land. So I am on what is traditionally known as Jukjaki, the land to which traditionally custodians have been the Ganigahaga. It has also been a land for many Indigenous communities, a grounding space for many Indigenous communities as an island that has seen so many things over so many years. And so I like to acknowledge the land, the centerpiece of my life, and especially in times like the one that we're living right now, is building community relations, is building communications with is building relationships with the lands that I occupy as a means, as a source for the way I think about our future building, our freedom fighting, and the ways in which we build almost spotlights back into what life could have been like before colonization, the ways in which our communities could have met, and the ways in which those relationships, those conversations, those ways of coming together would have acted as active processes to avoid a lot of what we're living and seeing and the tragedies that we're experiencing right now. And so as a way to ground us in this moment and as a way to just kind of feel, I think for me, and my apologies, we're at the end of the day and I'm feeling a little at the end of the conference. I think I'm a little bit all over the place and I think just feeling a lot of feelings. I want to give folks an opportunity to follow the link in the chat if they don't know what lands they occupy and what communities have traditionally lived on that land, who every day fight for that land, who are fighting to find ways back to that land. Make sure to find that out. I think there's not really any excuse today in 2023 to not be aware of the lands that we occupy and the communities that should have been able to build and live and grow and exist on. And so, yeah, I think just making sure that you have a chance or you take a moment to put that in the chat to acknowledge those lands. And I know a lot of the time when we give those moments, a lot of people opt out of it. But I think it's just to push ourselves a little bit further today as we close out this conference and to use the centerpiece of this conference, which has been action, which has been reflection, which has been intention, which has been awareness, which has been just really highlighting and wanting to put at the forefront the experiences of marginalized and affected communities. I urge everyone to just take a step further and to participate in this activity. So I'll ask everybody to close their eyes. And you can put your hand on your heart, your hand on your legs, wherever it feels right. Just kind of taking a moment to ground yourself, to feel the seat under you, to feel the ground under you. And just to take a moment to take a deep breath in. So taking a deep breath in and holding it and letting it out. And we'll do that again. A deep breath in. We'll hold it and we'll let it out. So with our eyes still closed, let's take a moment to visualize ourselves on the land that made us, the land that we have lived on, the land that holds our life stories, our love stories that we've gotten to play on, to dream on, to build on, that we every day get to see our loved ones on, that we get to experience. And I want you to take a moment to just visualize yourself face to face to the communities that allowed for that land to be here today and who cared for the land in a way that allowed the land to give you so much of what you have benefited from and that has allowed you to build such beautiful stories and experiences and histories on. And we're going to take 5 minutes, I think 3 minutes, sorry. I know that we don't have a lot of time. We're going to take 3 minutes and I just want you to take a moment to feel. I want you to take a moment to thank. I want you to take a moment to acknowledge. And I really want you to take a moment to just communicate through that visualization of those communities and in that way of honoring them and their lands and the lands to which they have relationships to, and to share a little bit of what kind of a love letter that you would write either to the land and to those communities, a letter in gratitude. And so we'll take 3 minutes and just take this moment really to feel, to communicate, and to honor. Coming back, we'll take a deep breath in. We'll hold it and we'll let it out. And we'll do that again. A deep breath in. We'll hold it and we'll let it out. So I know that that is something that a lot of the time we don't take the time to do, to just find the space to ground ourselves in the way that we honor different communities and their histories. But I think for me, I've always had an incredible love, and I have had such a privilege to have the opportunity to work and to be in relation to communities across Turtle Island, to Indigenous communities across Turtle Island. And I know that in the work that I do, in the way that I think, and in the way that I work, I could not be where I am, and I could not have a lot of reflections that I have without those relationships, without the ways in which I've been challenged and held and supported and cared for by those communities. And as someone who comes from lands, whose ancestors come from lands far away, from the grasslands of Cameroon and the desert lands of Niger, I think that a lot of the time I hold for me the ways in which I would have loved to see our communities get the opportunity to meet community to community in fellowship, in the ways in which we dream for the future, in which we community build, in which we plant seeds into the ground and let them grow out of our children and out of our communities and out of our fights and out of the ways in which we love each other and we honor each other and we hold each other so central to the ways in which we think about the world and how we think about our responsibilities to the world, to each other, to the land, to so much of who and what we interact with every day. And I think that in how we're using this moment of land honoring to close out the space, I hope that we can inspire folks to continue to be holding Indigenous communities at the center of our work, both here and in the ways in which we work abroad, because without the knowledge, without the perspectives, without the identities, the histories, the traditions, the spiritualities of Indigenous peoples around the world, we won't get anywhere. And I always go back to a conversation that I had a while ago with some friends and with some Indigenous friends from a little all over. It took a lot of love and it took a lot of care to build a world that we could have for as long as we have had it and treat it so poorly as we have. And so to hold that every day, to be able to live, to work, to love, to grow, to play on this land is a privilege that we can't take lightly. And especially in how we're seeing the earth call out to us to hold a deeper responsibility to it and to be more aware of how we are in relationship to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Layla, for grounding us, for bringing us back to what is important, what guides our work. I'm very grateful for your words and your sharing. Okay, so in our closing session, if you're joining us for the closing session, I'm going to make a very strong assumption that you have joined us for at least one of our other sessions, which means you have had a chance to see our community agreements and our community assumptions. Because we want to save as much time for discussion, I'm just going to open the floor and go through each slide and see if there are any comments, if anyone wants to contribute to changing anything. So giving everyone an opportunity to do that, but moving us forward so we can go into our discussion and into the meat of what we want the session to be. So I'll take a first moment to see if there are any changes, comments, thoughts on the first set of community agreements. I see a thumbs up. I see we're good. Okay, and I'll move us on to the second set of community agreements. So the second half of those community agreements. Once again, giving a moment to see if there are any points of feedback, anything we would like to change, or if everything is okay with these. Looks good to me. Moving on to our community assumptions. So these are the assumptions we're making being in this space, and we're going to carry forward within all the spaces that we share at this conference. So again, giving a moment to see if there are any responses to this, any reactions, any desires to change or edit. Nothing. Okay. And on to our last set of community assumptions. One more time, see if there's anything we would like to add, change, modify, any reactions. Okay, I think we're good. Okay, so this last session, as Fanta was saying earlier, is really about looking forward. So we don't have a lot of time, so we just have two things. We want to have a space for reflection and a reflection exercise on what's next, what's the future, what do we do after today, and how do we continue this important work. And then we'll bring everyone back together so that we all can have a quick chat on what does this mean, hear what others were saying, and for the team to be able to thank you for being here.
All right. So I will be just giving some quick introductions for our activity. The main activity for this session will be a reflection exercise. And this is just to give us all a chance to think about everything that we've heard and shared throughout our time in the last 2 days. There are going to be 5 breakout rooms and 5 topics related to the topics of anti-racism, decolonization, and PSEAH. So as you can see, the first group will be on la francophonie et l'antiracisme, and that will be a francophone breakout group. The second group is going to be on intersectionality, how to build it into all of our work as we move forward, and that will be a bilingual group. The third is going to be around the realities of decolonization and anti-racism work. That will be in English. The fourth is going to be around resourcing and sustainability in PSEAH with Shannon. That will also be in English. And then the final room is around PSEAH policy versus practice, and that is bilingual. When we say bilingual, it means that your moderator, so for my room, is bilingual and can take the questions or responses in any language and translate as needed. We're going to try to give as much time as possible. Originally, it was 30 minutes, so at least 25 minutes in each of the rooms. You will see that a Jamboard link will be shared in the chat. That is where you are able to share your inputs, written inputs as well. Once we are ready to start the activity, the breakout rooms will be opened and you self-select into the room of your choice. If you, for any reason, get kicked out, you can come back into the main room. Our tech commander, Mark, they will still be in this room, and so we'll be able to orient you as needed or let you back into the call. If you have any other questions, feel free to ask your breakout group moderator. And with that, Megan, can you please open the breakout groups? Okay.
Hello. If there are still people left in the main room, we welcome you to choose a chat room of your choice to join still. They're all open and waiting for you. And if you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you.
Mark, can you please put me into breakout room number 3?
Hi, Mark. Just checking in because we have a few unassigned folks. Did you want to join one of the breakout rooms?
For Pat Sargent, I'd like to join number 3.
Okay, I'll put you in number 3.
Thank you.
I did.
Oh, I see it.
Oh.
I see you.
Thanks, Mark. I think we still have Wenli, Janine, and Zainab. Did you want to join a room? Okay. Maybe they stepped away from their computer. Thanks, Mark.
Okay.
I'll go back into my room. I think Fontaine and I have nobody, but just in case. Welcome back, everyone. I'm going to share my screen and bring us back to the main room. There we go. Welcome back. I hope everyone had great discussions in their group. So we're going to have a really small moment of sharing back. I'm going to ask the people that were taking care of the room, so Leila, Shannon, Megan, Fonta, and I, to share a little, like one or two highlights of the discussion that you had in your group. And I will start in the order of the groups. So I'll start with Megan.
Merci. Donc, moi, j'étais avec Cassindi. Malheureusement, oh, sorry, I don't know why I'm speaking French because our group was in French. So I'll stop. I'll continue in English. Sorry, I'm tired at the end of the conference. Yeah, so unfortunately, I lost my colleague that I was having a great conversation with. I think some Wi-Fi issue at the end, but we were two in our space, and we got to talk a little bit about the fact that there's not a lot of resource available in French and around the issue of that. And finally, we started talking about some of their resources in their organization and some ways in which we can collaborate to create more resource in French. So honestly, we went a little bit around the subject, but it was a great conversation and a great starting point to collaborate. So yeah.
Thank you, Megan. And again, as we go through all of these, for the group, all of the groups had it, the Jamboard, and we're putting in notes, so you can always go back to the notes for the groups that you would have liked to go to but didn't have a chance to. I will skip myself and we'll go straight to Leila. Can you tell us very quickly how was your group and some highlights of what was discussed?
I think we had some really good conversations about what it means to be really intentional about this work. I think we landed a lot of where we tend to land with these conversations. There's no answers, just a lot of reflection, which is really, I think was really nice to hear also still, as like reflection being a tool for change, reflection being a tool for deepened understanding. And so, yeah, we had a good conversation kind of exploring the ways in which sometimes this, both PSEAH and anti-racism take time, and sometimes where we get stuck can be frustrating, especially in a space where there aren't often a lot of answers and a lot of questions. But I think always an inspiring conversation to be in, and thinking about the continued way in which we keep this topic at the center of a lot of our workplaces and are always looking to do better.
Thank you, Leila. Shannon, would you give us really quickly a sense of what was discussed in your group and any key takeaways from that discussion?
Thanks. So we actually got cut off at the end where folks were sharing something they had learned or they were taking away with them from this awesome 2 days. But we kind of went a little bit around the road of sustainability and PSEAH. So we talked about reporting mechanisms and some experiences there. We talked about leadership and how to kind of bring leaders along, or maybe push them a little bit. And we also talked a bit about just working with partners, sustained mentoring, as well as, the need to incorporate PSEAH into existing policies, practices, ways of working, and that kind of thing. And so I would say two takeaways. One was really around that I thought was really, really interesting, was one of the last shares around like what is the power of influence that we each have and hold. So yes, we can push our leaders, we can push for our funders, we can push different places to take on these issues more seriously and with resourcing, but we also have some resources on our own or spheres of influence that we hold. And so then how to really incorporate that into where we have influence, I think was one. And then the other was someone shared a bit about kind of really the intersections at this event, right? So their responsibility for gender equality and for PSEAH, and then thinking about how does that anti-racism then intersect into that, and how to much more intentionally carry that work forward. So.
Thank you, Shannon. Fanta, do you want to talk about our group?
Yes, so the last workout group ended up being Barbara and I, and we switched it around a little bit to talk about just policy versus practice, not only in PSEAH, but in anti-racism work as well, and the difficulty in kind of translating, the policies, the procedures, and the processes into like the realities of implementation. And also given that both anti-racism and PSEAH, there's no quick fix, it's more than just ticking a box. And so because it's something that requires continuous work in the practice of how we approach this, kind of highlighting the importance of continuous learning, continuous reflection, but also flexibility, because it's not going to be one size fits all. There are going to be mistakes, and there are going to be sort of changes that need to happen. And so that was the bulk of our conversation, finding sort of that intersection between the two. Right, and so thank you everyone. Barbara, are you running the exit survey?
No, I think Begin is, so it should be popping up on people's screens now.
So we have just 2 questions for you before we let you go. We would really appreciate it if you could answer them once they pop up on your screen.
I'm sorry, we are having a little bit of technical issue. So I'm not seeing the poll. It's saying that I'm not into the right, I'm not logging as the right person. So
let me try and oh,
I just launched
someone
it.
is okay. Perfect. Thank you. So while we do that, maybe, so please everyone take the time to fill out that. We really need it for our reporting. And to show some of the awesome work that has been done in the past 2 days. I think it's important to know what to expect from the team for then after this. So we'll be resending the links to the documents. We'll be sending the slides in French and English for each session, and you'll have access to those. We'll be sharing any and every resource that we have shared over the past few days, or anything that came up in the conversations that we were having. And we are also encouraging you to sign up for both our newsletters. So Digna has a newsletter that comes out, I think, every 2 weeks, 3 weeks?
Every month.
Every month, sorry. And then the Arc Hub has a newsletter that comes out actually more on a need to come out basis, because we don't want to be flooding your inboxes unless we have to. And also please go on our websites and continue to support our work. So Digna is digna.ca, and we are not digna.ca. We are a centre archhub.ca. I will change that and update that, and it should be in the chat as well. Well, do you want to do the other thank yous?
Yes, and just before we let you go, we really just want to say thank you, a big thank you, first of all, to you, the participants throughout this conference, but also those folks of you who have stayed with us both days, all of today. You've made it all the way down to the last session of the day. So thank you very much for coming to the conference. Thank you for sharing and listening and participating. And honestly, all of this work wouldn't have been possible without you. And so thank you. We also want to thank Corporation Canada and the Corporation Canada staff. So Mark, Melanie, Gabrielle, Olga, Shannon, Kate, thank you all. They've been helping us behind the scenes throughout all of these sessions, and they were really instrumental in making sure everything moved smoothly in our sessions. Thank you to our interpreters, Wendy and Aude, who have made it possible for us to offer our sessions in French and in English and increase our accessibility. You can imagine how hard it is to kind of interpret on the go and as we're changing things up. So thank you, as always. Thank you to Gabrielle Dubé, who is actually the GAC program liaison for both the ARC Hub and Digna. Gabrielle has been a great support to us and to the program throughout our time here. A larger thank you to Global Affairs Canada. Really, without their support, none of this work would have been possible. They fund our work. They make sure we're able to offer the trainings and the resources that we are. Of course, thank you to Corporation Canada, which houses our programs and hosts the work that we do. Thank you to all of our speakers for the past 2 days. They've really enhanced our sessions, and thank you for sharing their brilliant insights and for coming into our space and being open and reflective with the participants. And thank you to also Josephine Basunda, who is with Mubuntu Counseling. Josephine was the main psychosocial support that we had for the 2 days of the conference. So thanks to her, we were able to offer that service to all of the participants throughout. And finally, thank you to my art colleagues. And obviously, without them, all of this, I would not have been able to do it by myself. So it really was a collaborative effort. We've worked really hard on this. We hope that there was a lot of learning and a lot of reflection that came out of it. And thanks. And I think that's it. Did I forget anyone?
You maybe forgot. Well, I'm gonna thank you for all your amazing work, and really this has been a co-creation between our two teams, and I think we did something really interesting, fun, and hopefully is only the beginning of continued collaboration and thinking of these two things as complementary.
And with that, you are free to go. Thank you so much, everyone. Hope you have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Merci.
Hi, everyone. Merci.
Bye,
Merci à tout le
everyone.
monde.
Thank you. I just came late.
No
worries.
problem. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Okay, I'll send the feedback now. Because,
Okay.
yeah. Thank you. Bye-bye. Let me see.
Thank you.
Merci depuis le Congo. Merci depuis le Congo.
Merci.
Thank you from Congo. Thank you from Congo.
Merci, Kashindi. Pat, are you still filling out the survey? Because I don't want to end the meeting if you still are. Oh, we can't hear you. Are you good?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much for being here and for participating in our conference.
It was great. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Pat. And you've been all the way through to the